Hello, my name is Michael, and I want to share with you a bit of a crazy story about my relationship with my girlfriend. My relationship with Monica started quite banally. I met her at the supermarket near my house. I must say, by that time, I hadn't been in a relationship for quite a while and wasn't particularly eager to find a new one. But it happened as it did. She wasn't a beauty. Just an ordinary girl. Cheerful. Slim. Not stupid. But she definitely had something that drew me in. Her name was Monica. At the end of our time together, I offered to walk her to the bus stop, and we exchanged numbers. We hugged goodbye. That's how it all began. Long conversations on social media, late-night talks. Going to the movies and flowers. Walks around the city. Cafes and pizzerias. Road trips out of town in search of romantic spots. Everything felt natural and wonderful. Nothing foreshadowed the chaos to come. The first suspicious moment was when we went to meet her family, her parents and younger brother. They were wonderful, intelligent people. Only her brother seemed a bit spoiled. But overall, everything went well. If not for some tension in the conversation and a strange feeling of pretense and unspoken words. At that time, I attributed it to the natural awkwardness of a first meeting. Only later did I realize it was a dreary, doomed anticipation of inevitable horror. We hadn't yet lived together, preferring frequent meetings either at her place or mine. We made plans for the future. But gradually, my concerns grew as interesting aspects of her personality and biography began to surface. It turned out Monica had been married before and had a daughter who, for some reason, lived not with her but with her ex-husband's mother. For the last 3 years, Monica hadn't worked anywhere and didn't want to. At 24, she was living off her parents. And she clearly had issues with alcohol. No, Monica drank quite moderately at first. But once she started drinking, nightmares would ensue. She would inevitably start fights over made-up reasons, sometimes breaking dishes and valuable items, attempting to provoke me into a fight. I had to restrain her to keep her from flailing around. After all, I couldn't just hit her. And when she calmed down, she would ask me to tie her up and hit her before having rough sex with her. Those were her erotic fantasies. But only when we were alone. In social settings, she would always find another guy and openly start flirting with him, provoking me into jealousy. From which she derived some kind of painful pleasure. As time went on, we began living together. The drinking episodes became more frequent. During one of them, I discovered that she had no intention of working at all, because a woman shouldn't work, it's the man's job to provide. And everyone before you did so without complaints. At that time, I was earning quite well, but paying for rent, food, and all her desires was becoming increasingly difficult. The horror in our relationship was growing. I worked while Monica stayed home, managing the household. In her understanding, this meant cleaning once a week and cooking dinner. I always had breakfast by myself, she was still asleep. Monica completely stopped taking care of herself. From being a pretty and slim girl, she unexpectedly turned into a fat and unkempt madam. My tactful remarks only made things worse. Outbursts became almost regular occurrences. It was then that the first threats appeared, that if I left her, she would definitely commit suicide. But I didn't take those words seriously anymore. I often pondered how to carefully break up with her without causing an outburst. I had almost crafted a good plan for it. But then her brother came to visit us. While Monica was busy with something, I openly asked him, "Has she always been this crazy?" To which he genuinely seemed surprised that I knew nothing about it and told me a shocking story about their family life. It all started out rather trivially. She and I met at a supermarket near my home. I must say, I hadn't been in a relationship for quite some time, and I wasn't particularly eager to find a new one. But that's just how it happened. She wasn't beautiful, she was just an ordinary girl, cheerful, skinny, and not stupid. But she was definitely something. Her name was Monica. At the end of the party, I volunteered to walk her to the public transportation stop, and we exchanged numbers. We hugged goodbye, and that's how it started. Long conversations on social media, late-night chats, going to the movies, and flowers, walks around the city, cafes, and pizza places. Trips out of town in the car, looking for romantic spots. Everything felt natural and beautiful, and there were no signs of trouble in the future. The first suspicious moment came when we went to meet her family. Her parents and her younger brother were wonderful, intelligent people. Only her brother seemed a bit spoiled. But other than that, everything went well. If it weren't for some tension in communication and a strange feeling of naivete and understatement, I might have thought nothing of it. I wrote it off as the natural stiffness of first acquaintance. Only later did I realize that it was a longing and doomed expectation of inevitable horror. We had not yet lived together, preferring frequent meetings at her or my place. We made plans for the future, but little by little, my fears grew as I began to discover interesting features of her personality and biography. It turned out that Monica had been married before and had a daughter who, for some reason, lived with her grandmother, the mother of her ex-husband. For the last 3 years, Monica hadn't worked anywhere and didn't want to. At 24, she was living off her parents. And she clearly had a drinking problem. No, Monica's drinking was pretty moderate at first. But when she did drink, it was a nightmare. She'd get into fake arguments, sometimes breaking dishes and valuables, trying to pick a fight with me. I had to fix her so she wouldn't move. Well, not to fight with her? And when she calmed down, she asked me to tie her up and beat her up, then have rough sex with her. That was her erotic fantasy. But that was only when she was alone. In company, she'd find another guy and start hanging on him, provoking my jealousy. This gave her a kind of painful pleasure. As time went on, we started living together. We began getting drunk more often. During one of those times, I found out she wasn't planning to work because a girl doesn't have to work, it's a man's job to provide. Everyone before me had done it without objection. I was making good money at the time, but still, paying for our rented apartment, food, and all her desires wasn't easy at all. The horror of the relationship was growing. I was working while Monica stayed at home doing housework. In her mind, that meant cleaning once a week and cooking dinner. I always had breakfast by myself, she slept in. Monica had completely stopped looking after herself. From being a pretty and skinny girl, she quickly turned into a fat and ungroomed madam. My tactful remarks only made things worse. The tantrums became almost regular. Then came the first threats that if I left her, she would definitely commit suicide. But I didn't pay attention to those words. More often than not, I pondered how neat it would be to leave her without causing a scene. I almost made a good plan. But then her brother came to visit. While Monica was doing something else, I asked him frankly, has she always been this crazy? To which he didn't pretend to be surprised that I didn't know anything. He told me a shocking story about their family's life. It turns out Monica's suicide threats were no joke. Every time she was dumped by a man, she attempted suicide, serious attempts, not just posturing. The first time her husband left, she took pills.